Yes, dear. Thank you. Oh, great Einstein. Good morning. How's everybody doing? All right. Well, we're going to get class started this morning. Um, 2 Corinthians 9, 1 through 15 is what we're going to be covering today. The gift and the giver. For those you don't know me, my name's Aaron. I am not Josh, by any means. But I'm filling in for him for class this morning. So, as usual, I require participation, questions and answers back and forth, or I'll sit here and stare at you and blink, and it'll be a very boring and non-entertaining class, just like that. So, I'll go ahead and read. I'm going to go ahead and read 2 Corinthians 9, 1 through 15, and then we'll start in on discussion. Now, concerning the ministering to the saints, it is, I can't say this word when I read it, unnecessary. Superfluous, thank you. Yeah, because I can't read it. I can't read it and say it. I can say it now that I'm not looking at it. For me to write to you, for I know your willingness, about which I boast of you, to the Macedonians, that Achaia was ready a year ago, and your zeal has stirred up the majority. Yet I have sent the brethren, lest our boasting of you should be in vain in this respect, that I said, you may be ready. Least if some Macedonians come with me and find you're unprepared, we, not to mention you, should be ashamed of this confident boasting. Therefore I thought it necessary to exhort the brethren to go to you ahead of time and prepare your generous gift beforehand, which you had previously promised, that it may be ready as a manner of generosity and not as a grudging obligation. But this I say, he who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and he who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. So let each one give as he purposes in his heart, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to make all grace abound toward you, that you always, having all sufficiency in all things, may have an abundance for every good work. As it is written, he has dispersed abroad, he has given to the poor, his righteousness endures forever. Now may he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food supply and multiply the seed you have sown and increase the fruits of your righteousness, while you are enriched in everything for all liberally, which causes thanksgiving throughout us to God. For the administration of this service not only supplies the needs of the saints, but also is abounding through many thanksgivings to God, while through the proof of his ministry they glorify God for the obedience of your confession to the gospel of Christ, and for your liberal sharing with them in all men. And by their prayer for you, who long for you because of the exceeding grace of God in you. Thanks be to God for his indescribable gift. Okay, that was painful. All right, so the gift and the giver. So obviously we're going to discuss giving. This wonderful topic that some people love to discuss and some people hate to discuss because we're stingy. I'll flat out tell you, it's one of the hardest things that I have to do as a person. I was raised to not give when it comes to money to organizations. That's especially when it comes to churches. It was something that I had. So it's a struggle for me. I have to push myself to make myself do it. Does that mean, because there's a particular part in here, that it's am I not a cheerful giver? No. Obviously, I'm doing it because I want to do it, because if I didn't want to do it, I wouldn't do it. Okay? So we're going to get into that. So, flip my notes here. So we're going to look at verses 1 through 5. Some of the key points. Paul had boasted to the Macedonians about the Corinthians' readiness. Verse 2. So verse 2 it says, "For I know your willingness, about which I boast of you, to the Macedonians, ready to go a year ago." So in that particular verse 2, what is it saying? What exactly is he talking about? What is he saying there?
So Macedonia is up north, like Philippi and all that. Corinth is in the south or central, so it sounds like Paul has been talking to other churches about the Corinthians, by way of like using them as a motivational example.
So question. Would Paul just make up something just to say it?
No.
No. I'd say probably not, knowing Paul and all the other stuff that's going on.
I mean, maybe.
So he didn't just send this out there. So what triggered this? What do we think triggered this statement that Paul was doing? Paul was talking about. Is it possible that they said that they were going to give him or give a specific amount, that they pledged something to his need, to the needs?
It brings to mind the story of Ananias and Sapphira, of not necessarily. Well, actually, yeah, it is. They talked about, oh, this is all we have, kind of a thing, and then it turned out to only be like half of the profit that they made from selling a specific thing. Mm-hmm. And versus the woman who gave 2 copper pieces, and then they uphold her as having given more because she gave everything. She truly gave what was in her heart. And so I don't think it's necessarily about you have to vow or to promise to give the right amount, but it's like we talk about in our giving prayers, setting aside what is purposed in your heart for God.
So, verse 2 and verse 5. Verse 5, he sends brothers ahead to ensure the gift is prepared. So this leads me to the conclusion, I guess, that they said that they were going to give us the specific amount. And apparently it's a very exciting amount. It's not, a couple bucks out of one guy's pocket. I think we can figure that it's a pretty hefty amount that this particular congregation is pledging. Yes, ma'am.
When you think about the situation that's going on in Corinth, they possibly had said, okay, yes, we'll do all this and whatever, and then they get this letter from Paul about all the problems that they're having, and he thinks they might at this time say, hey, forget it, we're not supporting whatever it is he's doing. That's a possibility, and so he just wants to be sure that they weren't upset and that they were going to follow through with what they said they were going to do.
Okay. So, and that leads into a nice little question here. So why does Paul stress willingness versus exaction? This is I guess some important wording here. Yes.
Sometimes we might think, I really want to help this cause. And we feel good about that thought. But then we think about it again and we kind of back off like, oh, that's going to kind of hurt though.
Mm-hmm. That's one of my, I'm the first one to say, yeah, I'll help you do this or I'll help you do that. But, when it comes to sometimes unzipping that billfold, it's a little different. It's a little more painful. especially, how we view money. So Paul stresses the willingness to do it versus the exaction. What does this tell us about the motivation to give it? We all know how we're supposed to give, right? We're supposed to give with a cheerful heart. I can tell my 5-year-old that you need to give that nickel that you have with a cheerful heart. She's going to look at me like I'm short. She did it. She did it for 20 some odd years and is still doing it. It's a hard thing to teach. It's a hard thing to understand. It's a hard thing to learn. It's a hard thing to sometimes get over. How, and this is a question, just as a question, how do you deal with that? How do you, in your individual circumstances and thought processes, how do you overcome that obstacle? We'll just put it up there like that. Ma'am.
I like to try and put myself in those folks' shoes.
Okay.
What would I appreciate from others? Would I be willing to even accept the gift?
You gonna say something? Okay. Ma'am.
I think when you see that none of it belongs to you, it all belongs to the Lord, then it's not a problem. You realize He gave it all to you and He can take it all away, and then you look at it differently.
So perception of the money, perception of the blessings, that it is just that, you have what you have because it's a blessing. Yes, ma'am.
It's a blessing for us to be able to give. The small child who was handing out the little tokens, by us accepting it, it brought her joy to be able to give it to us. And that's the attitude that we should have. By God accepting what we give, that should bring us joy.
So there should be joy involved in the spirit of giving. We all know how we feel when we give a present to a birthday, and it makes us feel good to give something to somebody that they wanted or needed or were looking forward to, especially when it comes to kids or whatever. It's a good experience. Do you think maybe God had that understanding in mind, maybe, of it helps us just as much as it helps the people that are getting it? Maybe that's kind of a way we can get over that stress of willingness versus exaction, feeling you have to do it versus wanting to do it. Ma'am.
With the cousin giveaway, you get an example of how people are appreciative of that. There's one lady that came yesterday and she stayed probably 2 or 3 hours, and every time she would walk past, she would say, "Thank you so much, thank you so much," and so she was so appreciative, and she comes every year, and so it just, when you see people being so appreciative of giving,
Ms. Ruth, did you have comments? So application this. How do we view commitments in giving today? Is our follow-through cheerful or pressure? This is not a question that you have to answer. It's a reflective question. This one in particular. I want you to think about how you view your giving. How do you feel about it? And if it's a problem, how do you get over it? Okay. The principle of sowing and reaping, verses 6 through 7. So 6 through 7. But this I say, he who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and he who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. So let each one of us, as he gives as he purposes in his heart, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loves a cheerful giver. Let me ask you a question. How did you start to learn to give. Now, this is difficult for some of us. Got to go back in the Wayback Machine. Remember way back when we did, we're being taught, but when we're taught to give, how are we taught to give? I know I was taught to give. How are you taught to give? Ma'am?
Through example, usually generally by your parents or others. For example, when you go to the restaurant, even giving a tip to the waiter or waitress, or saying
good
thank you when somebody else does something for you. It doesn't have to be a monetary gift either. It can just be a hug for, hey, thanks for stopping by, and just showing appreciation for all things that you've given.
Okay, good, good. Anybody else? Sir?
From a practical point of view, I think one of many things I appreciate about Dad was when we had an allowance when we were kids. I remember when my allowance was $0.25, but he never gave us $0.25. He always gave us like a dime and nickels and pennies or something, and the purpose for doing that was so that we would have to decide what to do with that, and part of that was supposed to go to the Lord. And so you learn that from an early age, and when you get older, when you give a nickel out of your 25 cents, so to speak, it doesn't hurt as bad because you've been trained to do that. You know how important it is.
Yes.
Just an example of kind of a similar thing. When we first moved to the new church my dad was preaching at, we started giving all the little kids little piggy banks. And so then if they ever got any coins, they could bring them to church and you could empty them out. And I just remember there was one morning where one of the kids made a big thing, like he opened up the bottom and he shook it real hard, and they were plastic, so it made this real loud clattering as he shook it out. And it was funny because, everyone giggled a little bit, but there were some people that apparently were not happy with the interruption of the giving, but in kind of a way, we kind of had to tell them, you realize, this is bringing them joy to give. That means that, they are viewing this in a positive light. This is something that is going to help them build upon their giving attitude. And just not only, I guess, then giving people opportunities to be generous, but then, framing it in a light that is positive. Even though it might be inconvenient for us as, from an adult or practical perspective, just because it's inconvenient doesn't mean it has to be miserable, horrible.
No, agreed. And that's a good point, it really is. Generosity is tied to faith. Sowing sparingly equals reaping sparingly, sowing possibly equals reaping so much. So God, and the writer here, articulates that part as a very important aspect of what we do and how we do it. As well as verse 7, God loves a cheerful giver. This is being tied to a heart issue, is what this says here. And I'm using some erased notes, which is awesome. God love him. So God loves a cheerful giver. This is a heart issue. So this goes back to the same thing where how do you, us as parents, us as adults, us as leaders within the church, how do we teach giving to others? By showing our heart, how we give, what we're giving, being cheerful, being something you want to do, whether it's not just necessarily monetary. We are talking about the monetary side here, obviously, but there are lots of parts of giving that goes into giving that aren't nickels, dimes, quarters, pennies, and stuff like that. It is, as well as our time. It's a correlation of both. So there is that aspect as well of us being a cheerful giver when we are giving of our time, when we're giving of our labor. That aspect comes into this as well. I don't like cutting grass. Does that grass really need to be cut? Yes, I'd get out there and I'd cut it in a heartbeat. 40 minutes away, it's a little harder for me. But it's how we give of our time, our money. We should be happy to give it to the church. We should be happy to give it to the missions so that God's work can be done. That leads into the, how do we view commitments of, discussion here. What does cheerful giving look like in our congregation? Respectively, reflectively, how do we, as a congregation, give? Are we good givers, cheerful givers? Are we free givers? We should be. So, I'll give you a second. I'm gonna load this up. So, how often do you think you can actively reflect within the church and say, you're full of it? You're wrong. We're not giving properly. We're not giving cheerfully. We're not giving freely. Time, money. What can we do better? I think that's a question that every congregation, and every individual, and every family needs to ask themselves often. Little things and bigger things. Whether it's monetary, for ways to give, whatever, or the little time, the little things. Picking up your communion cups and throwing them in the garbage, policing up garbage, blowing the grass or something, or whatever it is. These little things, if we aren't, as a congregation, when I say we, I'm talking, I'm involved in this too. If we aren't actively looking withinwards at what we do and what we give and how we give, how can we look outwards and talk about how other people are giving? And I'm going to leave that one hanging out there for a little bit. Is our giving a habit, a heart expression, or an obligation? Well, let's think about that. Is it an obligation? Are we obligated to give? Be honest. Yeah. Yeah. We have a building. We have obligations. Do we need to have this building? Could we be meeting in a parking lot, in a park, in someone's house, in a school? Yeah, we could. But we choose to worship here. So we're obligated to fund that. We're obligated to give for that, to support that. We have a voting fund. We want to go to something bigger so we can have more people come in. That's excellent. It's outstanding. But we have obligations. We have obligations on supporting that, taking care of that, how we do that. Is our giving a habit? I hope so. Is that a bad thing? And that's a question. Is giving out of a habit a bad thing? Let's face it. We come here every week. Some of us use Tithely. Some of us, give a check or whatever, and it's kind of automatic. What's the danger there? Is there a danger there? This is kind of a question. Y'all think about it. When I have heard arguments that people say, I will never use automatic drafts because it takes away that giving aspect of me physically doing it, and I don't appreciate it as much. Outstanding. Me? If it ain't happening, it ain't happening. I will forget. I get to go on other things. Heck, I forgot to do the reading last week because I got tied up in something back there. Josh had to rescue me. Yeah, y'all didn't know that. Happens every now and again. I get distracted about other things going on outside. But, so, for me, it's important to me and my family that that happens. So I want that to happen. I want that to make sure that that obligation that I feel I have to the church happens. And if I know that's one of my weaknesses, I want it to happen. Does that mean I don't throw some dollars and stuff? I still do that. Whatever I don't do that, that's on whoever. But for me, that's something that I need. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say on habits, some people who have been doing church life since they were itty bitties, they have, I think, both the habit and the intention. They may have some extra intention and reflection on giving, because they have both. They've been thinking about tithing and thinking about that part of worship since they were, crawling and walking and toddling and going to baby class. And some people like us that have only been doing the church thing for, less than half our lives. Sometimes there has to be more habit put into it because we don't have the habit as long. We don't have that as long, so we have to have the habit put in there. And anything automatic is helpful because then if we have something extra thrown at us during the week or during the morning that throws us askew, and there's a wrinkle, and you forget the checkbook or you forget something else, then you're off your game. So you can have all the intention in the world, but if you haven't brought your checkbook or you had an extra bill, then something is going to throw that askew.
Agreed. Any other comments? Ma'am, I
I think
knew I
it's-
saw some other ones.
I think it's really important to have transparency when you're in any sort of organization, so that everybody knows what the needs are and they understand where the money is going to. I am not a cheerful giver if I don't know where the money is going. And I am not going to be as generous if I don't know where the money is going to either.
I can understand that, for sure. Ma'am,
Another issue sometimes with getting on where you have an automatic check sent, we may not reevaluate that income has changed.
that's a good point.
Usually it's going up, in some cases it's going down, but that's something we have to play into. That's
Good
another
point.
issue that we can get into.
Yep. So it says here, is our giving a habit, a heart expression, or an obligation? I think, yes. It can be all three. If you're aware of it, you're thinking about it, it's done correctly. It's definitely a heart expression for me, and it's definitely a habit, and I definitely feel obligated. It's all three. What is it for you? Is it all three for you? Is it just one? I hope the one would be a heart expression because we want to give. It can be a pretty cruddy way to do it every weekend if you're just giving because your wife's sitting there poking you in the side saying, "Did you write the check?" Trust me, that's happened quite a few times. It took me a while to get to where I'm at. I'm telling you. But it is that how you're approaching this? Is it through your heart? Do we give? Do we stand up here and say you're going to give 10%? You're going to give 20% of your weekly check? No, we don't. We don't do that. That's not what God asked for. He wants you as individuals, as families, to assess and evaluate to give of your means. Does that mean I made $50,000 last week and I'm going to give you $10? I don't know. Just remember what you should be, reaping sparingly and sowing sparingly and so on and so forth. Yes.
I think we just need to remember that it's worthless to give unless it's cheerfully because it doesn't please God.
That's right. You're just flipping a nickel in a pond. It's not a wishing well. So,
This question of it being heartfelt as opposed to an obligation, in this discussion on giving, I think we could ask the same question about singing or any other act of
Yes.
worship.
this is, just because we have it here, in a specific designated spot within worship doesn't mean it takes any more, any less spot over anything else. It's just part of an opportunity for us to give. It's a convenient time. You can give whenever you want to. Box is back there all the time. We've got 4 ways to give. How we purpose our hearts when we're doing it is the important part. Just like that little kid that throws that nickel into the, pan. Is that more or less more impactful to him than if you give, $300? That nickel was probably all he had, or a big portion of what he had. So it's an important aspect of what we learn, how we teach, how we learn, and what we do. Any other questions so far? Comments? Awesome. God's provision and purpose in giving, verses 8 through 11. All right. 8 through 11. And God is able to make all grace abound towards you, that you always having all sufficiency in all things, may have an abundance for every good work. As it is written, He has dispersed abroad, He has given to the poor, His righteousness endures forever. Now may He who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food supply and multiply the seed you have sown and increase the fruits of your righteousness, while you are enriched in everything for all liberally, which causes thanksgiving through us to God. Key point. The gift meets the real needs and leads to thanksgiving to God, verse 12. What do we pull out of that, folks?
Thank God. That doesn't mean that we give everything expecting for God to immediately fill whatever we gave back up. But knowing that our giving is not going to put us in a place where we cannot survive, not live, so the one who sows bountifully, that He scattered abroad and He gave to the poor, His righteousness endures forever. We may have a limited amount of funds, a limited amount of time, a limited amount of energy that we can give, but that we have a source that never runs out.
Okay, any other comments on that one? Sir?
I think about the widow who gave the very last that she had, the 2 mites, and sometimes I ask myself, do I think that she starved to death later that day? No. I think God had a way of taking care of that woman.
Good. The Jerusalem saints will glorify God because of the Corinthians' generosity. Verse 13. This particular one. Verse 13. By their approval of this service, they will glorify God because of your submission that comes from your confession of the gospel of Christ and the generosity of your contribution for them and for all others. Okay. No, I went backwards. Never mind. No. I got myself off a little bit. Okay. Jerusalem saints will glorify God because the Corinthians give generosity. Giving builds fellowship and the unity in the church. Verse 14. So, yeah, I skipped big time. All right, we're going to rewind. God supplies the giver so that we may abound in every good work. Verse 8. Paul quotes Psalm 112:9. Righteousness equals giving to the poor. God multiplies resources for those who use them for righteous purposes. Verse 10 and 11. How have we seen God provide when we step out in generosity? There's a good question. In your experiences, how have we seen God provide when we are generous? I can give you, I guess, one thing. So, since we're all building, expansion, stuff like that, when we were in Cary, and mind you, we were fairly young Christians at this point in time. We'd been in Sanford for a couple of years, and we switched church and started going to Cary Church of Christ. And right about when we started, they decided to go through an expansion. They added on their building. When I said they added on their building, they doubled it, put an elevator in. I mean, big, right? And they had a decent congregation. I'd say it was probably like 150, 160 maybe people. Maybe 200, well, a bit later. But so they had a decent sized congregation. And they gave very generously towards this endeavor because they saw a need. The need was they didn't have enough room, and there was a need for a bigger church within that community. They went, they built a much bigger auditorium, added more classrooms, everything like that, and I think they almost tripled their size that they were allowed to accompany, and within 6 months they were at like a 400 person congregation, because there was a need and it came. That's one of the things I see. Did they know that it was going to happen? No. They did it because they felt that was the mission, the outreach, the abilities to have education and within the community. How do you guys have some examples of where you might have seen it? It doesn't have to be anything that big; it can be very small. When you've seen God provide when we step out in generosity. Anybody have a example they want to share? If you don't, that's fine. This isn't I'm not taking names. You're good. Okay. Does this challenge our view in budgeting and giving? As a church, maybe, and individually? I'd say yes. Makes sense. In knowing that God has provided, we've seen how God's provided in various different ways and methods. Does that change how we give? Does that change how we give as a church as well? Our the correspondence courses that we do we rightly see all of the impact that has? No, we have some. We get that. So you get some correspondence back from folks that has some impact. We might not ever see that impact that those correspondences had on folks in various other places, whether it be prisons and inmates or Esmeralda that lives in Tennessee. We don't know. Does that mean we don't do it? Does that mean that it's not a mission that we do? For us, no, it's an important aspect of the mission of what we want to do. It's one of the ways we want to serve. So, reflect on that as far as what we do individually as well as the church. Outcome of generosity, glory to God, verses 12 through 15. Now I'm back to where I should have gone. For the administration of this service not only supplies the need of the saints, but also the abounding through many thanksgivings to God. While through the proof of his ministry, they glorify God for the obedience of your confession to the gospel of Christ and for the liberal sharing with them in all men. and by their prayer for you, who long for you because of the exceeding grace of God in you. Thanks be to God for his indescribable gift. So, verse 12, the gift meets real needs and leads to thanksgiving to God. So, when I was a 15-year-old kid, I really liked fishing. It was one of the things I could do as a youth, and being where I lived inner city, I could get a pole and I could go and do things. And I was really, really wanting a new fishing rod, new fishing stuff for my birthday. And I got a dictionary and some pencils. Yeah, that went over like exactly how you thought. So the gift meeting real needs and leads to thanksgiving to God. Did I need that dictionary? Probably. Yeah, I still can't spell real well. I could probably use one right now. Did I need the other writing utensils and stuff that they decided to give me? Yeah, probably. I'm still a little bitter about it. It still sticks with me if you can't tell. But the gift meets the real needs and leads to thanksgiving to God. When we're giving, when we're figuring out what we're doing, how much we're giving, time we're giving, purpose we're giving, physical doing of something. Just because I say I'm going to empty the garbage cans, does that mean the garbage cans need to be emptied? Let's make sure that how we're giving and that we're giving is just as important as what we're giving and if the need is there. This is this is I think a little more towards not the monetary side, but the heart side and the physical side. Could still be some monetary stuff in there, but I'm spinning it a little bit different. Comments, questions so far? John, and then
When we give, it should be intellectually and emotionally justified.
that's pretty good. I like that. I'm going to write that down. Say that again, John.
When we give, it should be intellectually and emotionally justified.
Intellectually and emotionally justified. I like that. So basically, I shouldn't just, rifle through my garbage can and throw some stuff in here and say I gave. That's not how it works. Should giving be comfortable?
Maybe not at first, but eventually.
Okay. And
Notice as it may.
yes, and it's all, again, it's relative. I mean, yes, it should be comfortable. We should be comfortable in doing it. But there should be a little bit of awkwardness. I don't want to say pain.
You should recognize that.
You should recognize that you're making a sacrifice. That it should push you a little bit. Ma'am, you had.
I was just gonna say, we need to step out on faith though.
Yeah.
Because when we give that way and we don't expect anything in return, God blesses us so much more than we give in that. And so when we're challenged to do things like for the congregation or whatever, then, we should look at it and say, can I give this much? God can't. Can I give a little bit more than that? I should.
Giving builds fellowship and unity in the church. And yes, I agree with you. Thank you for your comments. Giving builds fellowship and unity in the church. Verse 14.
Especially our time.
Yes, especially our time. Let's take the monetary stuff out. We'll talk about that in a second. What did we just do? And Grant, I apologize, I wasn't here, I was busy doing other things. I sent my wife.
Clothing giveaway.
Clothing giveaway. It's an impact to the community. Does it cost us anything money-wise?
Not really.
Not really. It's time, it's effort, it's work throughout the year for Patsy as well as others. So, Baxter, what did you do during the fellowship? You did something in particular.
During, like,
Yeah,
yesterday,
for the clothing giveaway. You went and got something,
all boxes upstairs and
and you went and bought
pizza.
pizza. He went and bought pizza, so we ate together as a congregation. The fellowship, the get-togetherness, it's all part of it. As we do things like that, it's opportunities for us to fellowship and be unified in what we're doing and how we're doing it and the mission of whatever purpose it is. Final reflection. Paul ends not by praising the Corinthians, but praising God. I'm just going to leave that one there. And remember that, put that in the back of your head and mark it in your book. His inexpressible gift likely refers to Jesus Christ. And our generosity is a response to the gospel. We need to give. We're supposed to give. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Class went all the way up to the end, almost, and plus. So, you've got 10 minutes. Thank you very much.